talk about using and citing sources. I've been running into some issues with this recently, and I thought it'd be helpful just to make a quick video to look at some things that we run into when we're trying to write a paper. So here's the situation. Your teacher asks you to write maybe a paper or an essay or maybe even a literature review. And what do? Well, you hopefully do some research. Maybe you use Google Scholar, go to the library, look at some databases, and you find an article on your topic. And you're so excited because this article is well written, it's pretty interesting, and it's tempting just to take it, to borrow most or all of it because it's basically completing the assignment that your teacher gave you. Let me show you an example of this. So here's a student paragraph, and then here is the original that this paragraph was taken from. And we're going to zoom in on one sentence of it right here. You can look here. The student paragraph says, that is to say, despite differences in aptitude, many students seem to be able to grasp an L2, and without sufficient motivation, even those with the most amazing aptitudes are unable to achieve long-term goals. Compare that to the original, that is, regardless of aptitude differences, whereas the student said despite differences, basically the same. Many learners seem to be able to master, the student said grasp, without significance, so instead of sufficient. So a few words were changed, but it's basically the same as the original. Now what do you notice here? A few words have been changed, but there's no citation, there is no credit given to the original. And in fact, this paraphrase is not even a good enough paraphrase. Just changing a few words, using a few synonyms is not paraphrasing. Paraphrasing needs to significantly alter the structure of the sentence. So, and that was done throughout this paragraph. We're not going to look at the whole paragraph right now. In fact, even this quotation here, you can see the quotation marks at the end of the first sentence there. Even the quotation was paraphrased, ironically. It was not even quoted directly. Where do you think this information was taken from, though? If you look at the paragraph, this author Dornier was cited 2005, and that's what we would normally think, but actually it was taken from another source, this source right here. So what the student did is this person did not actually probably read Dornier 2005. This person found another article that was covering this information and then just took this person's summary of Dornier. So it's a kind of a paraphrase of a paraphrase, you might say, or a paraphrase of a summary, which is actually not fair to your reader, because if your reader looks at this, your reader assumes that you have read Dornier, and there's no mention of these other two authors where the information was actually taken from. I have another example here, and this one is quite a bit longer actually, and I'm going to move out of PowerPoint for a minute. So let's look at this one here. We have an introduction, and then the student gets into the literature review here. Now, what this student has done is has taken this article here. There's an introduction, and then the literature review starts to come right here, and you can see, as foreign language learned at schools, English may be considered la la la, and the student has said, as a foreign language learned at academies, so basically changing a word or two, English may be assumed la la la, and then the student continues citing this person, Rebecca, and these people, Williams and Burden, just like over here. In the original article, Rebecca is cited right here, and then Williams and Burden a few lines down. And this paragraph is basically taken and placed right here with a few words changed. Then we have difficulties in learning English, and if you scroll down a little bit in the original, we have difficulties in learning English. And once again, a few words are changed, but the same citations are right there, Chen 2008, Chen 2008. So has this student actually written a paper? have they done a literature review or written a paper? The answer is no. They've taken the original, they've changed a few words, and they've pretended like they actually did the research. So did this student read Chen 2008? Well, probably not. Did this student read Rebecca 2000 or Williams and Burden 1997? Probably not, because they basically just took this article and made some changes. And then the ironic thing is that this article here is not cited in the student's references section at the end. In the references section, this article gets no credit at all, and instead, here are the references from the original article. So once again, this is not being honest with your reader, because your reader thinks, oh, you've read these different sources, you're integrating them into an argument, when in fact, someone has already done that in this paper right here, and you're simply taking their arguments and their own work, making a couple of superficial changes, and then passing it off as your own. And that is wrong. So, what have we learned? For one thing, only cite sources that you've actually read. So unlike some of these students who are citing sources that they probably did not read, if you have read the source, then you can cite it. And you need to do the work of finding and reading and synthesizing sources. These other people have done that already, which is why we need to give them credit and why we shouldn't take their work from them. And another thing we've learned is don't use paragraphs or entire articles and try to pass them off as your own research. Other people have done that work, and it's not fair for you to pretend like you've done it yourself. So one more technical question, though, is what if an article cites an article? Like going back to, let me go back for a second. If I go back here, Dornier, right, 2005, is cited in this other article, Motivation in Second Language Acquisition, a State-of-the-Art article. Well, two things you can do. One, you should probably only cite the article you've actually read. But if you think Dornier is really important and you would like to look into that in more detail, I would encourage you to do the work of actually finding, reading, and synthesizing and integrating that source into your paper. However, if you're not going to do that, it's not really fair to cite that person. And it is possible, although I don't recommend you do it very often, to cite both. And here's an example, Jones 1987 as cited in Smith 1995. This is not an ideal situation because ideally you would read that article yourself. However, there are times when you do need to do this as cited in type of situation, and that's okay. In fact, you're showing the trail of research, which you need to do. So, in short, please cite the articles you have read, not the ones that you have not read, and do the work of reading and integrating those sources into your paper. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Happy citing.